Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Gopi Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Giraj Govardhan Hari ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Grantaraj Shri Krishna Book ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Shinata Gaur Premanandi. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning and for the opportunity to serve by our discussions today on chapter 44 of Krishna Book. Krishna Book is written by Srila Prabhupada and is based on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And today's chapter is the killing of Kamsa. So we'll begin with our prayers. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnana-shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Paschati Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I also pray for all your blessings to do justice to this class today, so that we can have an understanding of the Lord's wonderful pastimes, and we can serve Him better in that way. So this killing of Kamsa is a very significant chapter, and some people may think that it's the most important chapter based on the beginning of Krishna's pastimes, when the demigods went to Lord Vishnu to pray for deliverance from the evil that was on this planet. It seemed like the primary reason for the appearance of the Lord was that these kings needed to be killed, and the only person who could do it was the Lord, the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, Krishna. And that is generally the understanding in the broader sense of why the Lord appeared, that He appeared to kill or rid the world of evil. It's sort of the overriding understanding in most traditions, actually, that even behind the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra is the need for the world to be rid of evil. But if we look at it very carefully, when Krishna appeared, He appeared not as a baby, but of course in His full manifestation as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He had His 4 arms, He already had both His weapons, and Kamsa was asleep. So if He wanted to kill him, He could have done it. Right? There wasn't any reason to drag the affair out to chapter 44, right, which we're reading here. But we understand from the teachings of our acharyas that he didn't have as his primary reason the killing of Kamsa, even if that is what the histories tend to emphasize. The most important reason for Krishna to appear, the reason he mentions first when he describes in Bhagavad Gita the reasons why he appears, is that he appears first to deliver the pious, then to annihilate the miscreants, and to establish the principles of religion. So the pious, in particular, the people of Vrindavan, Krishna's priority when he appeared was to turn himself into an ordinary child so that he could be carried across the Yamuna and enjoy his pastimes with the people of Vrindavan. So this was actually the main reason for him to appear. Right? Krishna was in his human-like form so that the people of Vrindavan could take him as their son, as their friend, as their lover, and enjoy these pastimes in the Vrindavan setting. So we're also taught that when it comes to these particular demons, Krishna's material energy can take care of them. He also doesn't have to appear specifically to kill them in that way as well. His devotees, his empowered representatives can do it. His incarnations can do it. Right? But his Vrindavan pastimes, only he can do. So his appearance as himself, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was primarily for his Vrindavan pastimes. It's also described that all the qualities that Krishna has, that only he has over and above his empowered incarnations or his direct incarnations and expansions, those are all related to his Vrindavan pastimes. His loving affairs, his devotees, his flute, and all these things are unique to him as Krishna. All the other qualities are shared. 93% of them are shared with the Vishnu forms, Narayan forms, 84% with Lord Shiva, and 78% with Lord Brahma and all the rest of us to a degree. But those qualities related to his Vrindavan pastimes, those are Krishna's alone. Right? Again, why he appears to display these qualities and these pastimes in relation to his devotees. In fact, our acharyas explained that the killing of the demons isn't done by Krishna. Krishna is all love. The killing is done by his incarnations and expansions with him, in particular Lord Vishnu. In the material world, Lord Vishnu is sort of like Krishna's work personality. We often say that. Like, you go to work, you have a certain behavior, appearance, nature. You come home, sort of take it out, or you should take it out and leave it at the door, right? And you're someone else. Only if you're God, you can actually literally be someone else and be yourself at the same time. So this is what he does. He has to do it because if you want to do something well, you do it yourself. Only if you can have another personality to do it, and you can get on with what you really want to do, which is what we expect of God, then that's what you do. And Krishna himself, the original Shyamasundar Krishna in Vrindavan, he's not in the business of killing. He's in the business of loving. So when he comes to the material world, because there's no demons in the spiritual world, of course, so he's all Krishna there. When he comes to the material world, Vishnu, all his forms are actually descended with him, and Vishnu actually does the killing. So from that we understand that when the demigods, the devatas, approached Vishnu at the beginning, and they asked him for respite from the evil on this planet, and he said, I will come as the eighth child, he wasn't exactly wrong. Because although Krishna was descending, he was descending with Krishna to kill the demons. So the killing was actually done by him. But the important thing to note in this is that he didn't say that he is the source of Krishna, as people think, that this is what it means, that Krishna descended from him. He just says that he will descend. But Krishna says that he is the source of all. So this helps us to understand the position of both of them. Of course, the distinction is arbitrary because we see things in terms of distinctions, that they appear to be two different personalities. But we just explain now they're the same person, just with the ability to be two people at the same time. Right? It's a little beyond our comprehension because we don't have any kind of example to compare this to in the material world. But this is God. This is his opulence, this is his abilities. So Vishnu basically descends in Krishna to kill the demons for him as his service to him. It's very interesting. But Srila Prabhupada explains that, well, just like we said, when Krishna has to do something, especially the tasks of God, I mean, he has to do it. But then he expands, his immediate expansion is Balaram, who is the same as him. But the difference is that Balaram thinks he's the servant of Krishna. He's the Sarvata Bhagavan. And like that, all the other expansions, they think they're the servitors of the immediate expansion. And that is their nature. And Maharaj, His Holiness Ajoksha Swami Maharaj was explaining it so nicely yesterday in class about how everything in the spiritual world is about service, but we always think of it in terms of that we are all serving Krishna, all the devotees in the spiritual world are serving Krishna, but Krishna is also serving the devotees. And all his expansions are also serving him. They know they're God, but they're also serving the expansions above them as God as well. It's a very interesting mentality. Very transcendental mentality. So all these forms, Vishnu, Narayan, they're all serving, carrying out all the tasks and functions for the Lord, and they're not getting offended. It's not a competition for them. We may think of it like that Vishnu may get offended if we say that Krishna is his source. It doesn't work like that. Not only are they the same person, but Narayan, Vishnu, he's in the mentality of serving Krishna. So it's very transcendentally unique. There's no such thing as competition in the spiritual world. So we'll start reading about this, the killing of Kamsa. After Kamsa's wrestlers expressed their determination, so Krishna and Balaram have been invited to Mathura by Kamsa and brought by their uncle Akrura. And Kamsa had set out many defenses. Right? His last lines, basically, because all his demons have been killed. Krishna killed the elephant, he killed a few loyalists as well along the way, and now he's facing Kamsa's champion wrestlers. After Kamsa's wrestlers expressed their determination, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the killer of Madhu, confronted Chanura, and Lord Balaram, the son of Rohini, confronted Mustika. So this is obviously indicating to us that even though they look like children who played in their childhood wrestling in the sands of Vrindavan, Krishna is the killer of Madhu. He was killing demons from the beginning of time. He appears youthful, but this is no ordinary person. These are no ordinary personalities. Krishna and Chanura then Balaram and Mustika locked themselves hand to hand, leg to leg, and each began to press against the other with a view to coming out victorious. Right? So then it's described how these two little soft, gentle boys were they were fighting so strongly against these mountainous demoniac wrestlers. They joined palm to palm, calf to calf, head to head, chest to chest, and began to strike each other. The fighting increased as they pushed each other from one place to another. One captured the other and threw him down on the ground, and another rushed from the back to the front of another and tried to overcome him with a hold. The fighting increased step by step. There was picking up, dragging, and pushing, and then the legs and hands were locked together. All the arts of wrestling were perfectly exhibited by the parties as each tried his best to defeat his opponent. Right? So it's a fairly astonishing scene to all of the people there, because they can perceive Krishna and Balaram only as children, right, fighting against these wrestlers, and they're very upset about it, even though Krishna and Balaram are actually, they're worthy opponents, we can see, right, more than worthy opponents. But the audience in the wrestling arena was not very much satisfied, because the combatants did not appear to be equally matched. They considered Krishna and Balaram to be mere boys before Chanura and Mustika, who were the strongest wrestlers, as solid as stone. Being compassionate and favoring Krishna and Balaram, the many ladies in the audience began to talk as follows. Dear friends, there is injustice here. Another said, even in front of the king, this wrestling is going on between incompatible sides. The ladies had lost their sense of enjoyment. They could not encourage the fighting between the strong and the weak. And yet they're still watching. Why? Because even though there are demoniac elements in the audience who are indeed hoping that these boys are going to be killed and sitting silently to this injustice, just as much as they were silent witnesses to Draupadi's disrobing, even among saintly people. There's a deeper reason that the audience is watching. But my dear friends, another lady in the assembly spoke out, just look at the face of Krishna. There are drops of perspiration on his face from chasing his enemy, and his face appears like a lotus flower with drops of water. Another lady said, don't you see how the face of Lord Balaram has turned especially beautiful? There is a reddish hue on his white face because he is engaged in a strenuous wrestling match with Mustika. So they were appreciating these beautiful visions of how Krishna and Balaram were fighting. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Giraj Govardhan Hari ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Prabhupada ki. So it's nice to look at Krishna when he's on the altar, adorned and very peaceful. But here he is fighting, and in this ghastly rasa, this audience is actually relishing this as well, because only Krishna can make something as ghastly as this. This is not this WWE thing where these guys pretend to fight, right? This is like real, like fight to the death. But Krishna and Balaram are so beautiful that they can make even this ghastly scene absolutely beautiful. And they're praising these inhabitants of Mathura, they're praising the people of Vrindavan because they've had this darshan, this exquisite vision of Krishna and Balaram all their lives up to this point. They're speaking now, these ladies. We cannot estimate how many pious activities were executed by the damsels of Rajabhumi so that they were able to enjoy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by looking upon the unparalleled beauty of His transcendental body. The beauty of the Lord is beyond compare. No one is higher than or equal to Him in beauty of complexion or bodily luster. Krishna and Balaram are the reservoir of all kinds of opulence. The gopis are so fortunate that they can see and think of Krishna 24 hours a day, beginning from their milking the cows or husking the paddy or churning the butter in the morning, while engaged in cleaning their houses and washing their floors. They are always absorbed in thought of Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada said, his comment is that the gopis are giving the perfect example of how one can engage in Krishna consciousness even while performing various types of material engagements. So the understanding before was that your material engagements were sources of entanglement in the material world and that you should give them up in order to become free of material attachment. The understanding generally is that. But Krishna, he explains very importantly in the 5th chapter. Actually, the 5th chapter, if you look at the Sanskrit, it's interesting. When I was younger, I didn't understand why there was a chapter 3 called Karma Yoga. But then there's a chapter 5 called Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So that's the difference between the two. But if you look at the Sanskrit, the first is called Karma Yoga, which is the execution of duties as people may do in the material world according to Varna Ashram, inherited duties. But the 5th chapter in Sanskrit is Karma Sannyasa Yoga, how you can perform the activity without attachment to the results. That's the difference. And that's obviously a step further. When Krishna is summarizing these topics to Arjuna in the 2nd chapter, he explains that I've explained duty to you, how you should do your duty as a Kshatriya because you'll be promoted to the heavenly planets and so on. But then he says, now I'm going to teach you how you can perform your duty without attachment to going to the heavenly planets or anything else that it's going to bring to you. But even that detachment from results, it's only one step to ultimate liberation. The common understanding is that material detachment equals liberation. And it may be liberation from material bondage, but it's not ultimate liberation, because one still needs to be attached to something spiritual in order to attain it. Prabhupada gives a very nice example. He says that you can leave the land, you can travel by ship, you can travel by plane, but if you don't find another destination, you'll be miserable. He often said that, especially because he had a lot of very long plane journeys and journey by ship. You need to have, or you need to attain a destination. It's not enough to just leave your previous situation behind. So that's sort of the situation when people only focus on material detachment and not an attachment to the spiritual realm or to a spiritual destination. So therefore Srila Prabhupada says that the gopis, they, by being constantly absorbed in thought of Krishna and unaffected by the contamination of material activities, were also perfectly situated in remembrance of Krishna. So they had attained not just the detachment from material things, but also the attachment to Krishna. And therefore, they had attained the highest perfectional stage of mystic power. They were the most perfect yogis. What to speak of the yogis who get distracted by the material powers they may achieve, or all these temporary things, the appreciation from the public and so on. But even those who just strive for material detachment, although that's a very elevated level, they still haven't achieved the ultimate goal of yoga. Only when they have perfected their spiritual attachment to Krishna, that's when they're truly liberated. And that's the definition of liberation. Because then you attain a destination from which you will not return. That's complete liberation from everything material. And that's why in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, it's confirmed that one who is constantly thinking of Krishna is a first-class yogi among all kinds of yogis. Yoginam api sarvesham, margate antaratmana. And of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental service to me. These are the gopis. Those are the most intimately united in yoga. And it's so different from what we have as a concept of yoga. What to speak of mystic powers which are so impermanent. If you really have some substance to your spiritual journey, you would not be pleased that the entire body of yoga is culminating in levitation or materializing some objects, right? It's a little bit of a disappointment, or it should be a bit of a disappointment. But even that's not in the mind of people these days. Yoga is just a way to keep fit. It's a bit shocking. All this Vedic literature, all this culture, this civilization, and we're just a little more supple, and we're enjoying our material bodies a little more. It's very disappointing if you think about it. So that's not it. That's ultimate liberation. Actually, if we look at the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and even these intermediate steps towards material detachment, control of the mind, control of the senses, these are extraordinary abilities. It's not something to be sniffed at all. This is what you attain on your way to liberation. We can't even imagine what that ultimate liberation must be then. And nothing in this material world, no religious process, no self-help, nothing can promise us control of the mind and senses. That's how powerful these processes are. And again, that's only an intermediate step. Right? So we should not belittle these concepts, and we shouldn't allow them to be belittled actually by people. It's important that we preach the ultimate goal of yoga, the ultimate goal that these transcendental personalities were able to achieve just by their apparent ordinary activities, just focusing them on Krishna. Karma Sannyasa Yoga. When Lord Krishna, the super soul of every living being, understood that the ladies in the assembly were anxious for him, he decided not to continue wrestling but to kill the wrestlers immediately. Krishna was playing. He was playing. He was aware of everything and everyone, and he just decided, okay, I'm done now. I've enjoyed my ghastly rasa. We just kill these guys. The parents of Krishna and Balaram, namely Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, Vasudeva and Devaki, were also very anxious. Like you can only imagine how they were feeling, because they did not know the unlimited strength of their children. Particularly Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, right? Because they had no concept that Krishna and Balaram were God. We'll read towards the end of this chapter that Vasudeva and Devaki they were aware of it. Right? Their love for Krishna is tempered by reverence. Right? They've had the vision of him as God already. Right? He proved himself to set the standard for future incarnations, that an ordinary child should not be taken as God, with the consequence that they had to see him as God. But that was okay, because their paternal affection for him is in the mood of reverence. But Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, they can't witness Krishna showing a universal form or a four-armed form. Right? There was one very beautiful pastime, of course, where Mother Yashoda had the opportunity to see some of Krishna's opulence by looking into his mouth, and that's just to give us an understanding of how deep her love is, because she couldn't accept it. She just couldn't accept it. When Vasudeva and Devaki saw Krishna as God, they accepted it and offered him prayers. When Arjuna witnessed the universal form, he offered prayers. He apologized. But when Mother Yashoda saw the universe in Krishna's mouth, just didn't accept it. It's an illusion. And that's the kind of love that she and Nanda Maharaj have for Krishna. So this particular scene must have been terrifying for them, for their little boys. So then Krishna quickly caught the two hands of Chanura and began to wheel him around, and simply by the centrifugal action, Chanura lost his life. Krishna then threw him to the ground. Chanura fell, just like the flag of Indra, and all his nicely fashioned ornaments were scattered hither and thither. Mushtika also struck Balaram, and Balaram returned the stroke with great force. Mushtika began to tremble and vomit blood. Distressed, he gave up his vital force and fell down just as a tree falls down in a hurricane. So it was obvious that Krishna and Balaram could have killed these guys right at the beginning, right? But they enjoyed their sport a little bit and increased the love of the devotees, the affection for them as they witnessed this, and then they killed them. After the two wrestlers were killed, a wrestler named Kuta came forward. So many wrestlers came forward. Krishna and Balaram killed all of them very easily, right? Toshala, many like that. All the people gathered there began to clap in great ecstasy, and no one could estimate the bounds of their pleasure. Right? All were gone. Kamsa had no defense now. The Brahmanas present began to praise Krishna and Balaram ecstatically. Only Kamsa was morose. He neither clapped nor offered benediction to Krishna. Kamsa resented that the trumpets and drums should be played for Krishna's victory, and he was very sorry that the wrestlers had been killed and had fled the assembly. He therefore immediately ordered the band to stop playing and addressed his men as follows. I order that these two sons of Vasudev be immediately driven out of Mathura. The cowherd boys who have come with them should be plundered and all their riches taken away. Nanda Maharaj should immediately be arrested and killed for his cunning behavior, and that rascal Vasudev should also be killed without delay. Also my father Ugrasena, who has always supported my enemies against my will, should be killed. When Kamsa spoke in this way, Lord Krishna became very angry with him, and within a second he jumped on the high dais of King Kamsa. So we can notice something here. Kamsa, again, he tried so many times to kill Krishna. Krishna didn't really take it seriously, right? It's quite interesting how all the demons that Kamsa sent for Krishna all appeared just before lunch. Krishna just enjoyed his rasa of killing them, and then they all just sat down and had lunch afterwards. It's actually quite amazing. But here, when Kamsa wanted Krishna's parents to be killed, his grandfather to be killed, his dear devotees to be killed, Krishna didn't waste a second. That's when he went to kill him. This is the Lord and his devotees. Right? He will tolerate insults against himself, but not against his devotees. So immediately, Kamsa had crossed that line, and then Krishna went to kill him. Kamsa was prepared for Krishna's attack, for he knew from the beginning that Krishna was to be the supreme cause of his death. Kamsa immediately unsheathed his sword and prepared to answer the challenge of Krishna with sword and shield. As Kamsa wielded his sword up and down, hither and thither, Krishna, the supreme powerful Lord, caught hold of him with great force. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the shelter of the complete creation and of his dear devotees, and from whose lotus navel the whole creation is manifested, immediately knocked the crown from the head of Kamsa and grabbed his long hair in his hand. He then dragged Kamsa from his seat to the wrestling dais and threw him down. Then Krishna at once straddled his chest and began to strike him over and over again. Simply from the strokes of Krishna's fist, Kamsa lost his vital force. So it's something that the Lord actually physically killed him. He didn't use a weapon or anything. He's making a very strong point here. Everything that he did, knocking his crown off, all his opulence, all his power, dragging him by the hair. It's very insulting to be dragged by the hair, and then hitting him with his own hands. It just shows how angry he was at all the atrocities that he had committed against his devotees, not for himself. And the Lord is serving his devotees in this way. That's his relationship with us, and our relationship is reciprocal service. To assure his parents that Kamsa was dead, Lord Krishna dragged him, just as a lion drags an elephant after killing it. When people saw this, There was a great roaring sound from all sides as some spectators expressed their jubilation and others cried in lamentation. So it's quite interesting because obviously Kamsa had a lot of supporters, but Mathura is the spiritual world. So there were also his pure devotees, Krishna's pure devotees, who were waiting for Krishna to come and to rule again. Of course, we are often cautioned that just as demons can live in Mathura, we can also get access to the spiritual realm in this world, but we just have to make sure we're on the right side. From the day that Kamsa had heard that he would be killed by the eighth son of Devaki, he was always thinking of Krishna with his wheel in hand. And this is very important. And because he was very much afraid of his death, he was always thinking of Krishna in that form, 24 hours a day without stopping, even while eating, while walking, and while breathing. And naturally he got the blessing of liberation, and because he was actually meditating on the Lord's form. That's a very interesting point. Right? And in a way we could understand it, because even though he was such a great demon, everyone in this material world has that abiding fear of death. And because Kamsa's death was predicted, in a way that sort of set the scene for his meditation. If he didn't have an awareness that he was going to be killed by Krishna, he wouldn't have this opportunity to think of Krishna so much. But now, he was aware all the time, especially because Krishna kept evading every demon that he sent, that he's going to kill him. Right? And the fear of death being so prevalent, that's all he could think about all the time. And we can imagine that, when you have such a powerful fear in your mind, that it overtakes everything. So because of that, contrast this to the meditation of the gopis that we've just read about, right, who are meditating constantly in all their daily activities in love. You have Kamsa meditating on Krishna and all his activities in fear. But the Lord sees the meditation. And because he was focusing on the form of the Lord, in particular the form of the Lord with his weapons, because the weapons are there for the demons. Right? Krishna has the club and the disc for the demons, and the conch shell and the lotus for the devotees. Because he was focusing on this particular form, he got the blessings of Sarupya. According to the opinion of some authorities, Kamsa attained Sarupya Mukti after death. He attained the same form of Narayan because he was focused on the form of Narayan. Pretty wonderful. In the Bhagavad Gita it said, Saratat bhava bhavitaha. A person gets his next life according to the thoughts he's always absorbed. So this is important because sometimes people think that the thought at the time of death is going to decide the state we obtain. But we don't realize that the thought at the time of death is a reflection of the thoughts throughout life. It wasn't that Kamsa just had this opportunity to see Krishna at death and that's why he got that liberation. He was meditating on him all throughout his life, or at least from the time that he was aware that Krishna was going to kill him. So in the same way, the gopis are doing that. Anyone who wants to achieve Krishna has to be focused on Krishna throughout their lives. Has to be making a concerted effort. Right? There's no way we can cheat Krishna. Even Kamsa didn't get to cheat Krishna at the end. He got the result of his meditation. So he attained the same form as Narayan or Vishnu. Right? In the Vaikuntha planets, all the inhabitants, they have the same bodily features as Narayan. From this instance, we can understand that even a person who thinks of the Supreme Lord as an enemy gets liberation or a place in the Vaikuntha planet. So what to speak of the pure devotees are always absorbed in favorable thoughts of Krishna. And even an enemy will get liberation and is placed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti. And anyone, because Krishna is all good. And that's how absolute Krishna is. Thinking of him in any aspect, whether thinking of him as an enemy or a friend, gets you an auspicious result. That's the quality of the absolute truth, the absolute good. But still, we have to remember this. The liberation of the devotee and the liberation of the enemy are not the same, because it's easier for us to think of Krishna as an enemy. Everybody practically is doing it. Right? Everyone is envious of God, angry of God, blaming God for something, not believing in God. Right? That's not the criterion for someone to attain this kind of liberation. Right? This was an exceptional circumstance. the impetus is for us to understand that even when the demons achieved liberation, it wasn't in their control the kind of liberation that they would achieve. It just so happened that Kamsa was meditating on that form of the Lord and got that attainment. But mostly the demons actually got liberation into their personal Brahmajyoti, and that is not a comfortable position to be in. That's not a guaranteed position. It's not ultimate liberation, because one can fall from that position, fall back down to the material world and start all over again. In fact, the way I sometimes think about it is that the Brahmajyoti is just a time out for the demons. Right? It's just a time out for them to get all of that out of their system, but then they come back. Right? It's not the ultimate liberation. So it's not something that anyone should be considering a goal, that they could continue in their animosity towards the Lord and they'll achieve some kind of liberation. That's not liberation. And Kamsa, he's an exceptional case, just like Putana. She was also an exceptional case. She actually rendered some service and she got to the spiritual, higher than Vaikuntha, she got to Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan. But that's the importance there, is that she rendered some service. So without rendering service, we can't achieve that ultimate liberation from which we do not return from. So devotional service should be the basis of anyone and everyone's relationship with the Lord. Kamsa had 8 brothers, headed by Kanka, all of them younger than him. And when they learned that their elder brother had been killed, they combined together and rushed toward Krishna in great anger to kill him. Kamsa and his brothers were all Krishna's maternal uncles, brothers of Krishna's mother Devaki. When Krishna killed Kamsa, he killed his maternal uncle, which is against the regulations of Vedic injunctions. Although Krishna is independent of all Vedic injunctions, he violates the Vedic injunctions only in inevitable cases. Kamsa could not be killed by anyone but Krishna. Therefore, Krishna was obliged to kill him. But as far as Kamsa's 8 brothers were concerned, Balaram took charge of killing them. That's because Balaram's mother Rohini, although being wife of Vasudeva, was not the sister of Kamsa. So basically Balaram's not the nephew of Kamsa or his brothers. So it was more acceptable for him to kill the rest of them, right? Not Krishna. He immediately took up an available weapon, most probably the elephant's tusk which he carried, and killed the 8 brothers one after another, just as a lion kills a flock of deer. Krishna and Balaram thus verified the statement that the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in order to give protection to the pious and to kill the impious demons who are always enemies of the demigods. So this very, very important statement is that the Lord is not under any obligation to follow the rules because he's all good. Right? We already stated that. He can't do any wrong, even if he breaks these rules. But still, he goes, we could say, out of his way to do just that, to maintain them. That's his example. He explains this to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, that if I disobeyed the rules, then everyone would follow me and the whole world would be put to ruin, right? The whole universe. So he's imploring Arjuna and us by extent, please don't do that also. Please don't break the rules. Do your duty. Follow the dharma that I've set down. This is an instruction to all of us. The wives of Kamsa and his 8 brothers were aggrieved at the sudden death of their husbands, and all of them struck their foreheads and shed torrents of tears. Crying loudly and embracing the bodies of their husbands, which lay on the wrestling dais, the wives of Kamsa and his brothers lamented, addressing the dead bodies. Our dear husbands, you are so kind and are the protectors of your dependents. Now after your death we are also dead, along with your homes and children. We no longer look auspicious. On account of your death, the auspicious functions that take place, such as the sacrifice of the boar, have all been spoiled. Our dear husbands, you treated persons ill who are faultless, and as a result you have been killed. This is inevitable because a person who torments an innocent person must be punished by the laws of nature. We know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Supreme Master and Supreme Enjoyer of everything. Therefore, one who neglects his authority can never be happy, and ultimately, as you have, he meets death. So he's a very wise woman, and it's a very interesting statement about the social standard of things, because duty is so important in the Vedic culture. So you can imagine the position of these women. Right? They were married to demons. It was their destiny, or it was their situation. And we know that generally they don't have a choice in these things, right? The marriages were decided for them. So they weren't doomed. Right? They weren't doomed by the Vedic tradition, because even though they were married to demons, because they were chaste wives, and they had performed their duties as chaste wives, the scriptures claim that they'll have very auspicious destinations, at least attainment of the heavenly planets. So it's challenging, it's a very challenging situation for them to be in. But we remember even in the history of Ravan was such a terrible demon, and his wife had to deal with so many embarrassments, like him stealing Sita. But because she was chaste, because she was a good wife, because she did her duty, her name is actually remembered as one of the most saintly women among the 7 saintly women in our Vedic culture. So this is the position, no one's really helpless, everyone's taken care of in some way, right? They even speaking about how their husbands actually took care of them even though they were demons. Right? And because of their advancement, their spiritual advancement through their duties, they understood the need for their husbands to be killed. Right? They understood the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? This indicates that they were not just foolish women, or they were not just demoniac women. They were actually, by doing their duties, they were actually quite advanced. And Krishna reciprocated. Right? He reciprocated. Since Krishna was kind and affectionate to his aunts, he solaced them as far as possible. The ritualistic ceremonies performed after death were then conducted under the personal supervision of Krishna, because he happened to be the nephew of the dead princess. Right? The Lord doesn't hold grudges. Again, absolute good. He conducted these funeral ceremonies, these rites, very nicely, right, with respect. After finishing this business, Krishna and Balaram immediately released their father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, who had been imprisoned by Kamsa. Krishna and Balaram fell at their parents' feet and offered them prayers. Vasudeva and Devaki had suffered so much trouble from Kamsa because Krishna was their son. Devaki and Vasudeva were fully conscious of Krishna's exalted position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Krishna touched their feet and offered them obeisances and prayers, they did not embrace him, but simply stood up to hear the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Krishna was born as their son, Vasudeva and Devaki were always conscious of his position. So this is very interesting, because now this is a shift in Krishna's Leelas. Right? From this point onward, he is going to be the prince. He is going to be in the role of the son, who is also God at the same time. Right? Which is why Krishna here is actually Vasudeva Krishna. Shyamasundar Krishna has stayed behind in Vrindavan to continue his pastimes in an uppercut way. And now he's going to continue his role in relation to the devotees who love him like this. Because all the forms that Krishna takes are in relation to the devotees who want to see him in a certain way or want to associate with him in a certain way. It's all about love. And since these personalities in Mathura love him in this way, he's going to have pastimes with them in this way. This is a shift in his love as well for them. And we'll see that from this point onwards, the pastimes will reflect that. Okay, so this is the end of this chapter. Thank you all so much for your kind attention. Shri Prabhupada ki. Any questions or comments? Raghunath Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, yeah. Thank you very much for the class. We're talking about the universal form. Maria showed up. I really like that picture very much. Very, very much. And Maria Yashoda is looking into Krishna's mouth and seeing the universal form. But she sees it, and for that moment she realized that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. For that moment, for a split second, she understands that Krishna is God, but then she gets covered. And the acharyas give the commentary on it, saying that it's like when you're boiling milk and the straw in the milk, the straw goes down and sometimes it comes up. So when it comes up, then she knows that Krishna is God, but then when it goes down, it's covered. So they understand, Krishna is God, but it's covered quickly. So it's like that. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's really deep. Thank you.
So I'm just wondering, you spoke about Kamsa always meditating on the form of the Lord, and then after Krishna killed him, he attained that form, the Vishnu form. So I'm just thinking, because Kamsa was originally, either Jay or Vijay, and that is their original form, was it arranged by Krishna for Kamsa to always think of that form so that he, at the time of death, attains that form again?
Either, but the whole, the pastime of Jaya and Vijay is, you have to understand they were devotees. That's one. I was giving a class in India, online class, and the same question arose. But, in circumstances, like when I'm seeing you and I'm seeing others, I'm seeing different forms, and I'm relating to you in that particular way. But their relationship was with Krishna like that in the spiritual world. They had those forms already, but it was covered. See, they came with an intention to please Krishna. The intention was to please Krishna because Krishna wanted to fight, and then nobody was to fight. So the best fighters came. They took that role. But remember, when they came to the material world, that got covered. So yes, and when you go back, see, your spiritual form can change also. Your rasa can change. It's not, depending on the association you have and then intense desire from yourself, it could change. Although it remains fixed in 99% of the case, but it can change. So their eternal rasa was that, so it remains like that. So thanks, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Could I ask on that point then, some of the transcendental personalities, they can also expand themselves into other rasas.
Sorry?
Some of the transcendental personalities in the spiritual world can also expand themselves into other rasas as well.
Yes, yeah, that's also there. Yeah, that's also there. They can a person can be in Chaitanya Leela and Krishna Leela simultaneously, but that's there in the Brahma Samhita. It's mentioned there by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his purports. Yeah. They can expand themselves. But Krishna can do anything. Like the other day, whether Krishna can kill a spirit soul. Somebody asked the question. And Prabhupada said, yes, but he won't do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is that okay, Prabhu? Any other questions, comments, corrections? Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.